I'm Melissa Shanahan, and this is the Velocity Work Podcast, episode number 46. This podcast is for attorneys who are running their own firms. We explore tactics, tools, and stories related to pushing past simply lawyering well and into building a successful firm. Working in your firm and working on your business are two very different things. This podcast focuses on the latter. Welcome to the Velocity Work Podcast, everyone. I'm so glad you're here. I don't think I say it enough. I just want you guys to know how grateful I am that you're tuning into this. I work really hard with these outlines and with the podcast to make sure to do my best to stay useful for you guys and relevant, specifically with what owner attorneys are dealing with, entrepreneurial attorneys are dealing with. And so I really appreciate you being here. I know it is not lost on me that your ears could be somewhere else listening to something else. So I appreciate it. Thanks for tuning in. And we keep working harder and harder to make sure we keep providing you with great content. Well, speaking of content, let's just dig into this week's episode. What we're talking about today, I titled it, Stop Answering Things Immediately. And this came up because I talk about this subject a lot with clients, but I recently had one of the participants in Mastery Groups, which is a program I run. It's daily accountability, which is pretty awesome. It's intense and great to help people show up and operate in the ways that they want to be in their business and on their business. And one quote that I wrote down this week that someone said, she said what she realized, a lesson that she had learned: great customer service does not require me to answer things immediately. And I thought, oh my God, I'm so glad she got that. I'm so glad that was a light bulb for her, because she's using great customer service here as an example, but so many people, they just answer things in the moment. When someone pokes at them with maybe it's a team member, maybe it's a client or a prospective client, but the people will just stop what they're doing to turn and face a team member to answer their questions or give them what they need. And then same thing with clients, to answer their questions or give them what they need. And it's just unnecessary. And the cost of doing that is much greater than you would think. We are used to just kind of running with our default. And so you aren't as in tune with how great that cost is to just stopping what you're doing and giving people what they need when they're asking for it, instead of delaying that a bit. Now, there are some things that are urgent in your business, and I'm not saying to ignore those when those come up, but most of the time we tell ourselves that we need to respond in the moment. But if we really thought about it, that could wait an hour or two. Like, it's not urgent. It's important, but it's not urgent. And, I know there's the whole quadrant with important, urgent. You guys probably know the quadrant I'm talking about. And if you don't, sorry that I just said that. That probably confused you. But we're not talking about that today, is my point, because it can be a useful tool. But just if we just narrow down to when people pull at you and when people need things from you and when they ask questions, what to do with that and how to operate differently. Because the last thing you want to do is just respond as things pop up to you, because it waters down your work, your focused work. And that helps contribute to this feeling of busyness, but not actually being productive. So this is I think a very important thing to talk about. Now, we talked about, there's sort of this internal pull that you might have, and there's an external pull that you might have. And the one thing that I think maybe you get to decide for yourself could be categorized as urgent is if a prospective client is reaching out and is interested in working with you, right? So we'll talk about how to deal with things as they pop up so that you don't have to be pulled out of what you're doing in your plan. The one thing I want you to ask yourself before I kind of talk through how to think about things and maybe how to set things up, it's important to examine why you operate this way. And let me just tell you, and the reason any of us take any sort of action is because of what it stems from, like how we're thinking about something. And so what I notice is when I talk to clients is there is this belief that you abide by, whether it's conscious or unconscious. There's an undercurrent. You're just abiding by something that you're believing. And for instance, with the client I was just telling you about, hers was great customer service requires me to respond immediately. That was what she was operating off of. She had an epiphany where she realized, oh, actually, no, that's not true, but I'm running things that way. But she had an epiphany. Great customer service does not require me to respond immediately. So maybe that is the undercurrent belief for you that you're just abiding by. But another one that I hear a lot is that people tend to just abide by this belief. If I don't respond immediately, the ball will get dropped or something will fall through the cracks. And so that's why they respond immediately, because they feel like I'm going to forget something, or what if I don't remember to follow up with X, Y, and Z? And so they just do it on the spot because they don't want to forget something, right? Or they don't want to let someone down. Both of those, I get it, but we are from here forward not going to allow those to just run the show. I'm going to give you some things I want you to think about and find your groove with implementing these. Everybody's different. I don't have a prescription, but I do have things that you need to think about and you need to plan for. Okay, so speaking of plan for, the thing with this is that you need a plan. You need a plan to deal with things as they come up for people around you, because the plan currently, if it is just to tug at you, that's not a good plan. You need an actual, it's a system to abide by in order to address everyone that needs help or needs something from you, but not at the cost of pulling you out of your important work. Okay? It's worth thinking through what that might look like for you. Now, I just mentioned systems and processes. Really, truly here at its core, systems are the answer. So I said a plan, right? But part of your plan should be to have a system for dealing with these things. And when I say systems, many people think of systems in their business. And yes, especially when it comes to prospective clients that might be reaching out to you, having systems inside of your business that will handle that so that you don't have to drop what you're doing to go talk to somebody right in that moment. That's really helpful. But I also want you to consider systems. When I say systems, I want you to think about systems for you, not for your firm, for you and how you operate. What do you abide by? What can you count on as like, this is just what I do, right? So thinking through systems for yourself, because if you have a system you abide by, it prevents these like attention traps, which produces, when you get pulled out of things, it produces a level of mediocrity inside your firm, and you can't get past a certain point, at least not in a way that feels good and right. So you want to have this way of operating that you agree to and that you think through and test out, because you might be wrong. Maybe it doesn't work quite well. And so then you have to test it out, come back next week and figure out, okay, what do I need to tweak about what I set up for myself? When you sink into a focused task, which you should have time to do, you should have calendared time to sink into focused work. When you do that, it's kind of like, if you have to think about it, when you sink in, it's the clean focus. So you're undistracted. You remove distractions so you can make that happen. And as you're in it, you build this train of thought, which there's a lot of value to that, to really building the train of thought. You get deeper and deeper into the thing that you're working on. When you get pulled out of something, it pulls you out of that train of thought. And this is called context switching with, actually, it's an engineering term, but it's used a lot in regards to productivity and deep work. So it's context switching, and when you context switch, it's like you're moving from one thing to the next. Someone asks you a question, pulls you out of your deep work. There's something called attention residue, where it's like you're still kind of like half your brain is kind of like in that task that you were working on, and you're also trying to give a quick answer to somebody. And so you switch context. And so there's some attention residue there from the thing you were working on. And then you try to switch back into the original task at hand. And there's sort of like this lingering thoughts, or your brain is kind of hanging on to a few things that you just answered. And so you're not back. It's so hard to get clean focus again with the original task at hand. It's hard to get in the zone. And actually the research that's been done, and I'm going to say the conservative number because there's a few numbers thrown out there, but the conservative number is it takes 22 minutes after when you switch context and you try to get back to get into the zone. It takes about 22 minutes to get back to where you were, so that you can keep moving on the task at hand that you had set at hand, which is crazy to think about. So you can see why it's just so important to abide by something or to have a plan for when this stuff comes up. And the other thing I want you to think about, and I'm telling you to think about these things because I'm hoping as you listen to this, you might have ideas. You might be generating ideas for how you could approach it. The other thing I want you to think about is if you know a CEO or someone who runs something that is good at it and you look up to them and they're successful with what they've done, they've built something that you admire. Think about how they act and how they operate in their day. Do you think they allow to be pulled? Do you think they allow for people to just expect that they're going to give a response in the moment? No way. There is no chance. And if you do think that's how they operate, you need to check yourself because I could do a different podcast on that, like how they think they're successful, but they might not be. And also you aren't seeing their books. So there's that. But for example, I have a great friend who is very successful, has sold a huge company and has his own private equity firm, and he's awesome. He is a true badass. And when I observe him, we're really close. We've been close for almost 20 years. And when I observe him working, there's times where I'll work from his office or whatever. I have the privilege to be able to sit in on something where I get to hear him and how he shows up. And it's crazy how rigid he is with his schedule and with what is okay and what's not okay. And people know that. Everyone that works with him knows that. So no one just walks into his office to ask him a question. No way would that happen. And not that he wouldn't throw something at them if they did, but he has set expectations with everyone and he has space reserved for them. Maybe like office hours kind of space. But with a couple of people, he has like very regular daily check-ins because there's a lot that they're working on very quickly. And so it's a place for them to be prepared and bring their questions and bring their barriers. They work through them and then that person can go back and hit the ground running. But they don't just walk into his office to ask him something every time they come up with a question or a barrier. Now, I'm not saying that you need to just overnight like flip a switch but you could. So there is that. The most important thing is that you start to help people around you understand what you're trying to do and why it's important. You don't have to tell them why it's important. I guess you don't have to give them a lot of context, but the truth is you will have buy-in from them if you do really get them on board with the switches that you're making instead of just telling them what you're doing and they just have to abide by it. It's kind of confusing for a team if you haven't been operating that way and then all of a sudden you do and they don't understand why. It can feel cold. And while it'd be easy to just say, well, that doesn't matter. It's their job. I pay them for their job. Kind of matters. Morale matters and team matters. And so you want them to really have buy-in for the changes that are made. So maybe, when we think about, I hope some of the things that I just talked about gave you some ideas about how you can protect your time a little bit more. But at its core, you need to make a plan and you need to honor the plan. And don't allow yourself to just get sucked back into, when someone asks a question, you just kind of give into it and answer the question. Because you really do need to set up a framework that works well for you and your firm. So whatever the plan is, I would sit down and think about what do you need to offer your team and your clients? What do you need to offer them that will give them what they need, but it protects you and your sort of visionary thinking, your brain. Your brain is what is building this firm. And yes, your team helps you go to the next level, to the next level, to the next level, but you're the brain at the top of it. And so if you aren't operating like a CEO, if you aren't operating and protecting your time and really so that you can get the most out of your brain and be the most efficient and have the deepest work done possible, the best work done, then no one else is going to have that value either in your firm. And so really be an example of how you want people to approach their work so that everybody sort of takes a cue from you, right? Right now, the cue they might be taking is just that, inefficiency is okay because, when someone comes to you, you just give an answer. Someone comes to you, you give an answer right there in the moment. And truthfully, we all know that's probably not the most efficient way to work. Yes? Okay. So make a plan, honor the plan. And when you're thinking through your plan, I want you to really rely on systems and processes to help you stick with this plan. So one that I was mentioning earlier, if there's a new client that is a potential client that's contacting your firm, then yeah, you might not say, well, tomorrow from 12 to 2, I have hours to talk to people like yourself. No, that's not what I mean. You want to make sure you have a system set up so that the intake process or the consult process can get rolling and they feel like there's progress being made, even if you aren't the one to be speaking with them immediately. So that setting up, making sure that there's a really seamless experience for clients that to the best of your ability doesn't just yank you out of what you already had planned for yourself. So that's an example of a system or process that would be implemented into the firm. And then I also want you to think about systems and processes, like I mentioned earlier, for yourself. What systems do you need to operate by that will serve everything in a much better way, in a much greater way? You just need to ask yourself, what do you need? What do you need in order to be able to not have to just answer immediately what hits you? Do you need designated space for team members? Do you need designated space for current clients? Do you need a new system for current clients so that they can get updates and don't have to pull at you for updates or your team members for updates? So that's another system for your firm, I guess. But then also thinking about, do you need to get up earlier? Do you need more sleep? Do you need to eat better? Do you need to unplug for real at a certain time every night? Do you need to take an additional day off every week? Some of you are working 6-7 days a week. Do you need to reduce that by a day? What is it? What do you need in order to really set yourself up to not have to put out fires consistently and or answer things, respond to people consistently in the moment? Whatever that answer is, whatever you need, what system can you set up? What process do you just abide by in your own life to help you realize that? Okay, so we've got make a plan and honor the plan, and you can use systems and processes inside the firm and or for yourself to think through how to really honor what you need for your plan. And then the other is to set expectations with those around you. I've talked about this before in the podcast, but how can you set expectations in a really compassionate, nice way with your team so that they know that they can't just pull at you? And so that could be a really great option for office hours or for regular check-ins where they're prepared and they bring all their stuff to those meetings. That's where you go over it all. That's where their questions are stacked for you and their barriers are stacked so that you guys can work through them together. And then they truthfully, what tends to happen is when owners set this up and they have more of a designated space, the morale tends to go up on the team because they feel like they're getting the attention that they need. They're getting the support that they need instead of feeling like they know you're busy. They come in and ask a question. There's a short answer given and then they leave. Okay, that's great. That has worked for them. But what's better and what they love even more is time to really think, to talk with you about these things. It helps them learn. It gives them context so they can start to make these decisions smarter for themselves in the future inside of your firm. It's like coaching and mentoring. There's an aspect of that when you have designated time to go over a set thing, a set agenda, set items that they want to bring to you. there's more that comes out of that conversation for the team member than just the one-off yes, no kind of answers throughout the days. Okay, I've given you guys plenty to think about with this. The main point here is you need to get yourself to a place where you aren't just responding immediately. Stop answering things immediately and find a way to do that. Really set yourself up to have a plan for that you can work. There's a quote by, I think, Margaret Thatcher: work your plan, or plan your work and work your plan. That is the gist of this. So get a plan in place so that it reduces how much you're pulled at, and work your plan. And then at the end of that week, I want you to think about, okay, what worked, what didn't work, what do we need to adjust for next week? Okay, make adjustments next week. And maybe the first week you do this, it's a disaster and it didn't, like, you were wrong about a lot of things. Okay, don't throw your hands up. Do not say this didn't work for me to have a plan. No, keep working your plan, keep revising it and keep working it and get better and better and tighter and tighter. And eventually you'll have a bit of a culture of accountability around this. You'll have a culture of expectations will be set. It'll be kind of how you guys roll, that you don't just pull on one another. You really, like, if you have a plan and you work your plan, you abide by systems and processes. You don't just ad hoc pull at people. So, lots of food for thought here. If you're really bad at this, get your first steps in place. Like, really think about the things that I've brought to you on this podcast today and think about how to make your first plan. If you're pretty good at this, but you know there's room for improvement, get to it. Sit down and think about how to tweak this, because you're losing time, which means you're losing money, which also means that your frustration is probably increased beyond what it needs to be. And so there's less satisfaction when you're pulled at more, and there's more inefficiencies happening, which means there's money being lost. So just be smart about this and think about how to tweak it, what needs to be put into place. And if you think you're really good at this already, like there's no room for improvement, I would question that. I would really look at what's going on and start to pay attention to when people are getting sort of their quick answers throughout the day. Just see how often it happens. And if you feel like, oh, maybe there is some room for improvement here. So have a look at this area, because it's a real time suck for people, and it creates a lot of inefficiency. And the more focused you can be with your work and with your schedule, the more focused and sort of sunk into the schedule you can be, the better output you will have. So don't risk the quality of output with this problem that tends to go unchecked. Really check this one, get this one tightened up, and allow the processes around it to evolve as time goes on. Okay, everyone, that is what I have for you today. Stop answering things immediately. Have a wonderful week, everyone. I will see you here next Tuesday. Hi guys, it's me again. Thank you so much for listening. If you like this podcast, you probably understand that growth requires results, not just staying active. If you want to learn how to build your days around getting results, I'll show you how in this zero fluff class that I teach. Go to velocitywork.com/results for registration information. I cannot wait to see you there. If you want to hang out with us on social, come on over to Instagram. Our handle is velocity.work. And on Facebook, it's facebook.com/meetvelocitywork. Cheers, my friends, to real growth and a great life. Show notes from this episode can be found at velocitywork.com/podcast.